Okay, so guys, thank you very much for coming. My name is Irina, and I will tell you about Russian market for your games today. Please raise your hands. How many of you have your game published for other countries besides your own one? If you have your game not only in your country, raise your hands. Okay, like 30% of you. Here is what I want to tell you. When I think about global company entering any new market, I always love to compare it to my first trip to China. I had to go to China Joy conference, and for some reason all of my friends, they liked to scare me about this country. They all said to me, "Irina, you will not find any good food there." Or, "Irina, it's impossible to get a taxi." Or the funniest was that, "Irina, the beds in the hotels are so small, so you will have to sleep on the floor." And I was super confused about this. And when I finally came to China, my friend Vincent, who is Chinese and he works for Alibaba Group, he met me at the airport. Then he helped me to get a taxi to the hotel. Then he introduced me to everyone, to all the people at the conference. And at the end, this trip to China was the most productive conference ever. And that all thanks to a local friend from the biggest company in China. So I'm saying you all of this because the same is about Russia. So to have success in Russia, you need to have a local friend, preferably from the biggest company, and then you are fine, then you'll be fine in that country. So I was so excited that I forgot to take this. Can you explain me how it works, please?
Press the biggest.
Yeah. Oh. Okay, of course, yeah. So when I was saying that you should have a friend from the biggest company in the country, in case of Russia, it's my little group, and I'm happy to work for this company. It's the biggest one because it owns 3 largest social networks in Russia, including vk.com and ok.ru, and it also owns its own emailing service. So basically, it's like the Russian version of Facebook and Gmail all together. Besides that, besides internet projects, we are literally the biggest company in Russia because it's 27th floor skyscraper with its own football fields, which we actually convert into a skating rink in winter. And we have a movie theater, of course. I think it's very important to consider this information when you decide if you want to be our partner or not. Besides having a local friend in Russia from the biggest company, you need to consider these things, and I will tell you about them. So the first one, you will learn today the reasons to bring your game to Russia. The second one, you will understand how the Russian gamer look like and are they really different from other gamers in other countries. And the last one, I will share some secrets to succeed with you, so your game will be successful in Russia. Let's go. So there are 3 main things that you need to know about the Russian market. The first one is that this market is number 5 market by app installs. And it's over 62 million mobile users that will be happy to try your game. The second one, that actually the competition in Russia is much less than in other countries like United States or Europe, and average CPM is 5 times less there in Russia. And the last one is that this market is surprisingly very easy to test because the localization to Russia costs 3 times cheaper than localization from English to any other language. And that's cheap. And another thing is that to do marketing in Russia, you just need to know all the partner, and by coincidence, it's our company. And this partner will help you to do all the marketing and introduce you to all the partners in the country. The next thing, so, oh my God, it doesn't work like that. So speaking about gamers, this is a really good market for games because this is gaming is #1 category by downloads and it's #2 category by retention. So bring your game to Russia. #1 category by retention are social networks, so it's very hard to compete with social networks, as you can understand. Another thing is about how Russian gamers look like. Are they really different from other gamers? So basically, there is not much difference because these gamers expect some really good things in the game. So they expect to have the game to have good graphics. They expect the game not to weigh too much and not to kill the battery. And probably the biggest difference from other gamers in other countries is that Russian people want the game to be translated into Russian. And I will get back to that later. It's a very important point of my presentation. And here is my favorite part, actually. We have our own gaming department in mail.ru. And we also have our analytics department. That's why we made a research and we asked our gamers what do they actually want in the game and what they appreciate the most. And we found that there are 4 main groups there. So the first main group were people who were looking for immersion. And for them, the main thing in the game was to feel part of the game, to feel like they are inside the game. And inside the game, they were looking for interesting character and the interesting plot. And they really loved when the game was based in some novel or some famous story. And among this group, most of people preferred to play RPG games and strategy games. So you need to consider it when you decide which genre you bring to Russia. RPG and strategy is definitely a good idea. The next big group were people who actually were looking for control in the game. So they liked to feel that they can control everything and that they can plan all the activities that they are doing. And mostly we found out that these people were some high-level executives with some good education. And most of them were men. Another big group were people who just enjoyed the process. Most of them were women, and they really didn't care what game to play. They just liked playing at all, and many of the gamers preferred to play some casual games, some match 3, or some puzzle games. This is another big genre that would be famous in Russia. And the last one, actually, were people who were looking for achievement in the game. This is my favorite slide because of Arnold. So basically, these gamers, they wanted to achieve something, and they didn't just like to pass mission by mission, but they wanted to upgrade their character a lot, and they wanted to get something in the game. And the favorite genre for them were some slots, and some racing games, and some shooters also. So here is another big group of genres which would be popular. So once you know which genres and what games do Russian gamers prefer to play, probably you would need to know some success tips in Russia. And here is the first one. So, of course, you need to understand the market share. And that's very important. Because global companies such as Facebook and Twitter and Google have very small share in Russia. And that's one of the most common mistakes of companies that come to the Russian market is then they expect that Facebook and Google would be also big there. And when you come to Russia, you need to work with local companies and especially with local social networks. The second big thing is about the localization. Only 7% of Russian people speak English. So if you want to get more than 7%, then please localize your game. In the same time, we made this graph which will explain a lot to you. So localization is not that important for every genre of the game. For example, if your game is casual or any kind of match 3 game, then it doesn't really make sense to localize it. It's okay to leave it like that because people will still get it. But if your game is an RPG or a strategy game with a huge cultural background and with lots of text there, then you just have to localize your game. Please do that, because people will not understand how to pay there, and you want for them to pay, right, inside the application. And the third thing I want you to know is about operation systems. Don't ignore Android audience. Android is almost 3 times bigger than iOS in Russia. So if you want to have a lot of audience, and when global companies come to the Russian market, they want scale, they want to reach lots of people, please don't ignore Android. Another thing is about the relevant CPI. Please, guys, raise your hands. How many of you work with Facebook ads system for promotion of your games? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. So basically, we have something very similar to Facebook ads interface. We have our own self-service interface for promotion, and of course it's in English, and that allows you to get all the audience of all our social networks. This interface is called My Target. And thanks to that, we have all the information about the CPI and about the prices and about the users. So I can tell you that the average CPI in Russia would be around $1. And that's super cheap comparing to United States and to China, where CPI is around $16, right? And again, it varies. For example, for casual games, it may be even less than $1. And for RPG games or some shooters, it may be around 1.5 or 2. So remember, don't overpay when you come to the Russian market, because you can get very cheap users there. And the fourth one, wow, that's a case study. Okay, I love it, I love it. It's my favorite case study. So here is a game which is called Guild of Heroes. It's an RPG game. And you can see that the CPI that they got in Russia was around $1, and it's even cheaper than the average one, so it's really cool for the RPG game. And these guys, they did a lot of stuff. They experimented with lots of audience groups. They tried lots of creatives. And now you have a chance to play my favorite game. I call it the CTR battle. So you have a chance to guess which one of the creatives was more successful among the Russian gamers. So which of the creatives people clicked more. Raise your hands, please, if you think it's the second one, which was more popular. Okay. And raise your hands if you think it's the second one. Oh, sorry. Raise your hand if you think it's the first one. Okay. And raise your hands if you think it's the second one. Okay, it's like 70 vs 30. That's surprising. So the right answer is the second one. And it's very easy to explain. I can tell you why. Because this game was promoted in Russia like 1 month ago. And at that time we had very depressive weather in Moscow. It was rainy, it was cold, the summer never came, and that's why people, they didn't like to click on anything that had gray colors, because gray was everywhere. And they preferred to click on banners with yellow, with red, with green, and that's why this banner was successful. So it's all about the weather and the colors. And the good thing is that this insight is actually relevant and applicable for you 9 months out of 12 in Russia. It's almost always bad weather there. Another thing why this banner was more successful is because there are some traditional yellow flowers there, so people immediately recognize them and they feel like they are clicking on something that they know. So basically, the summary I want you to remember these main 5 reasons to enter the Russian market with your game. So the first one would be about the amount of people you can attract. The market is really huge, and if you want to show your game to over 62 million mobile users, then Russia is really a good market for you. The second thing is about less competition. So basically, it's much easier to enter the Russian market just because the average CPM there is like 5 times cheaper than in the United States. Another thing is, again, easy to enter because localization to Russia is 3 times cheaper than localization from English to any other language. And you need to know just one partner to approach all the people you need and to know all the companies you need. And that's us again. And another thing is that thanks to our My Target tool, you can target users super specifically. You can target gamers, you can target paying users, you can target people who are similar to the users who already play your game. And the last thing is about monetization. So basically, most of the companies do in-app purchases in Russia, and that works a lot. But also we have our own monetization tool, and you can use it, and you can also show ads inside your games, and that's also a very good revenue for you. And that's it. Well, I have much more information about the market for very specific game genres, and I will be happy to share it with you, but I don't have time. So please approach me after my speech, and I will be happy to share all the secrets with you and exchange my contacts. And let's talk after that. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Fantastic. You were very compact. Does anybody have a question about the Russian market they'd like to throw out before we? No, they're just waiting for lunch.
One question.
Oh, there is one. Sorry, I can't see. You better read the lights.
Yeah, thank you very much for the insightful information about Russian market on mobile. I wonder if you have any information about VR.
Well, VR is developing in Russia. Mostly now it's about the mobile games and mobile apps, but I think VR is the next step. So it's definitely a good point to enter the market if you want to be one of the first ones.